What made the 1960s the most daring and transformative decade in cinema? From the fall of the studio system to the rise of bold visionary directors, this was the decade where film took risks and never looked back. Roger Ebert, the voice of American film criticism, saw through the noise and crowned a few masterpieces that still shape cinema today. So, hit that like button, subscribe, and let's explore the 15 greatest films of the 1960s. According to Ebert himself. The Battle of Algiers, 1966. Roger Ebert called it so honest it feels like a documentary, but so explosive it plays like a thriller. The Battle of Algiers is a searing reenactment of the Algerian struggle for independence from French colonial rule, and its raw authenticity continues to rattle audiences decades later. What makes this film extraordinary is its refusal to choose a side, offering instead a brutal mirror reflecting both revolution and repression. Shot in grainy black and white with non-professional actors, the film immerses us in the narrow alleys of the Casbah, where bombings, raids, and interrogations become daily fare. The haunting score by Ennio Morricone underscores the moral ambiguity of warfare, turning each scene into a slow burn of suspense and tragedy. Pontecorvo didn't just tell a story, he dissected a political moment with surgical precision. Ebert believed this film transcended cinema. It became a tool of education and controversy. It's been studied by political leaders, banned in countries, and praised in film schools. For audiences, it shattered the illusion of clean war and asked what freedom really costs. In today's climate of global unrest, its relevance has only deepened. Watching it feels like time traveling into the belly of resistance, with no easy way out. The Wild Bunch, 1969. When Ebert reviewed The Wild Bunch, he said it was ugly, savage, and brilliant, a Western that redefined the very nature of violence on screen. Sam Peckinpah tore through the romanticism of cowboy justice and revealed a dying breed of outlaws marching into a world that no longer needed them. What made it legendary wasn't just the bullets, it was the heartbreak behind them. Set at the dawn of the 20th century, the film follows an aging gang of gunfighters who attempt one last score amid the political turmoil of the Mexican Revolution. William Holden's grizzled Pike Bishop leads the charge, torn between loyalty, greed, and the encroaching modern world. The finale, a blood-soaked ballet of slow-motion gunfire, is one of the most iconic sequences in film history. Ebert argued this wasn't just a Western, it was an autopsy of American myth. The outlaws weren't heroes, they were relics, clinging to a code long obsolete. Yet, we feel for them. The film's violence was unprecedented, but it wasn't glorified. It was painful, ugly, and necessary. In redefining the genre, The Wild Bunch also forced audiences to question their appetite for spectacle, and that's exactly why Ebert considered it essential. 8½, 1963. Fellini turned confusion into art, Ebert wrote, and in doing so, found truth in the chaos. 8½, is a cinematic fever dream, a swirling black and white confessional from the heart of a director who doesn't know what to say next. Marcello Mastroianni stars as Guido, a filmmaker who retreats into fantasy and memory when inspiration fails him. But in his failure, we find brilliance. The film isn't linear. It dances between real life, dreams, childhood flashbacks, and surreal encounters with lovers, collaborators, and his younger self. Fellini crafts a world that reflects the inner turbulence of creation. The circus-like imagery, the mesmerizing score, and Mastroianni's melancholy charm make it hypnotic. Ebert saw 8½, as a film about filmmaking, yes, but more importantly, about the creative soul in crisis. It's a masterwork that speaks to anyone who's ever been stuck, lost, or overwhelmed by the weight of expectations. In celebrating indecision and confusion, Fellini created clarity, and in Guido's paralysis, he found motion. For audiences, the film is both intimate therapy and a grand spectacle. It doesn't just entertain, it resonates. Bonnie and Clyde, 1967. When Bonnie and Clyde hit theaters, critics were split. But Roger Ebert saw through the controversy and hailed it as a new kind of cinema, hip, brutal, and breathlessly alive. It was the first American film to marry French New Wave style with classic outlaw mythology. And it did it with a bang. Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway sizzle as the doomed lovers who rob banks and live fast in Depression-era America. But beneath the glamour is a growing sense of dread. The violence erupts unexpectedly, in jolting bursts that shattered Hollywood taboos. The final shootout, unflinching and unforgettable. Ebert praised it for its duality, stylish yet savage, romantic yet nihilistic. The film challenged the Hays Code, pushed boundaries, and paved the way for the gritty realism of the 1970s. Audiences weren't used to anti-heroes dying in slow motion, drenched in gunfire, and yet they couldn't look away. Bonnie and Clyde didn't just redefine the gangster genre, it changed what movies could say and how they could say it. Persona, 1966. Roger Ebert described Persona as a film we return to endlessly, not for answers, but for questions. It's perhaps the most hauntingly ambiguous film of the 1960s, one that wraps its secrets in silence, identity, and psychological unraveling. Directed by Ingmar Bergman, the film strips away plot and plunges into the abyss of human consciousness. The story is deceptively simple. An actress stops speaking, and a nurse is sent to care for her in a remote cottage. As their relationship deepens, their identities begin to blur. Who is the patient? Who is the caregiver? And is either truly herself? Shot in stark, high-contrast black and white, Persona uses close-ups like weapons, capturing every flicker of thought. The film fractures, literally, and turns in on itself. Ebert saw this as a fearless exploration of selfhood, communication, and the masks we wear. For viewers, it's unsettling, hypnotic, and impossible to forget. It's not just a film, it's a mirror, and not everyone is ready to face it. Dr. Strangelove, 1964. Roger Ebert once said this film transformed nuclear paranoia into dark comedy, and then made you choke on your laughter. Dr. Strangelove is the rare film that dances on the edge of annihilation and still dares to be hilarious. In a world teetering on the brink of Cold War disaster, Kubrick weaponized satire with chilling precision. Peter Sellers plays 3 separate roles, each more absurd than the last, in a farce about a U.S. general who goes rogue and triggers a possible nuclear holocaust. What follows is a symphony of absurdity inside the war room, where political buffoons debate the end of the world over phone calls and cigars. Every frame is soaked in dread and comedy, 2 emotions that shouldn't mix, but somehow do. Ebert revered it as Kubrick's most dangerous film because behind the jokes lies truth, and that's the most terrifying part. The fear isn't fictional, it's a reflection of the time, of leaders who could launch doomsday with a misplaced word. And today, the film still stings. That's why Dr. Strangelove remains not just relevant, but prophetic. The Graduate, 1967. When Roger Ebert first reviewed The Graduate, he called it a rebellion wrapped in silence, confusion, and Simon and Garfunkel. This wasn't a story about finding one's purpose. It was about drifting without one. Benjamin Braddock, fresh out of college, played by Dustin Hoffman, is a man staring into the void of expectation and sleeping with the woman who symbolizes it. Anne Bancroft's Mrs. Robinson is seductive, bitter, and broken. Their affair is less about love and more about drowning. Nichols frames every shot with claustrophobia, Ben sinking into a pool trapped behind glass, cornered by adults who offer nothing but cliches. And when he runs off with Elaine at the end, Ebert noticed something haunting. The joy fades from their faces. What now? Ebert considered The Graduate a cinematic landmark. It didn't shout, it whispered. It didn't explain, it suggested. And in doing so, it spoke directly to a generation feeling aimless and suffocated. Audiences saw themselves in Ben's awkward stares and realized they weren't alone. The film became more than a coming-of-age tale. It became a cultural mirror. 2001, A Space Odyssey. Ebert described 2001 as an event, not a film, a meditation on time, technology, and human evolution. To this day, 2001, A Space Odyssey remains cinema's most audacious leap into the unknown, a film where dialogue is minimal, meaning is elusive, and visuals overwhelm the senses. It's a journey through space, yes. But more than that, it's a voyage into the soul of mankind. Split into 4 abstract chapters, the film takes us from the dawn of apes to the vast void of interstellar travel. HAL 9000, the soft-spoken yet chilling AI, represents the quiet terror of machines turning on man. The final act, known as the Stargate sequence, defies explanation. It isn't watched, it's experienced. Ebert wrote that the film refused to hold our hands because it trusted us to feel. And he was right. Kubrick wasn't giving answers. He was giving you a dream, maybe even a nightmare. For audiences, 2001 became a rite of passage, a test of patience, and a revelation. It's not about what happens, it's about what you become by watching it. Breathless, 1960. When Roger Ebert first saw Breathless, he felt like the screen had cracked open. Jean-Luc Godard didn't just break the rules of filmmaking, he set them on fire. This French New Wave masterpiece turned cinematic grammar inside out, and in doing so, birthed a new era of rebellion on film. Jean-Paul Belmondo plays Michel, a small-time crook with a love for American gangster films and a reckless streak to match. After killing a cop, he flees through Paris, chasing freedom and Patricia, an American student played by Lullce Vita. But this isn't a love story, it's a flirtation with nihilism. The camera jumps, the plot stumbles, and the style dazzles. Ebert hailed Breathless as a wake-up call for what cinema could be. Its handheld energy, its disregard for polished structure, its fourth wall-breaking charm, all became a template for decades of indie and counterculture cinema. Watching it felt like watching cinema rewire itself in real time. For audiences tired of the expected, Breathless was oxygen. To Kill a Mockingbird. Roger Ebert didn't just praise To Kill a Mockingbird, he revered it as one of the most compassionate films ever made. Based on Harper Lee's Pulitzer-winning novel, the film doesn't just tell a story of racism and justice, it invites us to see the world through the innocent eyes of a child. Gregory Peck's portrayal of Atticus Finch is the cornerstone of decency in cinema. As a Southern lawyer defending a black man falsely accused of rape, he doesn't yell, he listens. He doesn't grandstand, he speaks with quiet force. The courtroom scenes are gripping, but the film's real heart lies in its small moments. Atticus with his children, Boo Radley hiding in plain sight, the loss of innocence creeping in frame by frame. Ebert believed this film had the rare ability to both indict injustice and nurture empathy. For generations of viewers, it became a moral compass, and in a world still haunted by inequality, its lessons echo louder than ever. Watching To Kill a Mockingbird isn't just viewing a classic, it's confronting our better selves. Lawrence of Arabia, 1962. Roger Ebert called Lawrence of Arabia the greatest epic ever made, and the most enigmatic. It's not just a sweeping desert saga. It's an introspective portrait of one man torn between glory and disillusionment. Peter O'Toole's mesmerizing performance as T. E. Lawrence radiates with complexity, equal parts hero, outcast, and myth. David Lean crafted a visual symphony of sun-scorched landscapes and wind-blown sands, where the desert itself becomes a character. Every frame is majestic, every scene deliberate. The film charts Lawrence's journey from British intelligence officer to Arabian revolutionary, but beneath the grandeur lies deep psychological tension. Who is Lawrence, really? A savior or a man intoxicated by power? Ebert revered this film not just for its scale, but for its silence, those long, wordless shots that invite meditation rather than action. It reshaped what audiences expected from historical drama. There's no quick payoff here, only the echo of destiny fading into the desert wind. Lawrence of Arabia is cinema at its most ambitious, and yet, its most human. The Manchurian Candidate. Ebert hailed The Manchurian Candidate as the most paranoid thriller ever made, and terrifyingly prescient. Released during the height of the Cold War, this political nightmare plays like prophecy. It's a film that threads hypnosis, brainwashing, and political assassination into a tapestry of absolute dread. Frank Sinatra stars as a haunted Korean War veteran, unraveling a communist plot embedded deep in the American political system. But the real scene stealer is Angela Lansbury, who delivers a chilling performance as a power-hungry mother with incestuous overtones and zero morality. Her villainy still sends shivers down spines. Ebert admired how the film weaponized confusion. What's real, what's implanted, and who's truly pulling the strings. It was bold, controversial, and temporarily suppressed after JFK's assassination, only adding to its mythos. For viewers, it confirmed their darkest fears, that democracy could be hijacked from within. Today, its influence can be seen in countless political thrillers, but none match its cold, cerebral terror. Psycho, 1960. When Psycho was released, it broke every rule, and Roger Ebert applauded its genius. This wasn't just a horror film, it was a radical shift in how stories were told. Hitchcock shocked the world by killing off the leading lady 30 minutes in and never letting the audience recover. Janet Leigh's iconic shower scene remains the most dissected sequence in film history. But beyond the slashes and screams lies Anthony Perkins' haunting performance as Norman Bates, a soft-spoken motel owner with mother issues and a secret so disturbing it redefined psychological horror. Bernard Herrmann's shrieking score became a permanent fixture in cinematic soundscapes. Ebert saw Psycho as a gateway, the film that led audiences into the age of modern horror. It wasn't about monsters under the bed. It was about the monster inside the mind. Psycho made viewers complicit, voyeuristic, and anxious. And decades later, it still has the power to disturb in the quietest ways. La Dolce Vita, 1960. La Dolce Vita is a film of endless nights, beautiful emptiness, and a spiritual ache you can't shake, Ebert once wrote. It's a film that seems glamorous on the surface, but under the parties, paparazzi, and champagne lies a soul quietly breaking. Fellini didn't just capture Rome, he exposed its hollowness. Marcello Mastroianni plays a tabloid journalist drifting through decadent circles and meaningless affairs. Each chapter is a surreal episode in his disintegrating search for purpose. From Anita Ekberg's iconic fountain scene to the haunting beach finale, the film leaves breadcrumbs of beauty, but no resolution. Ebert found truth in its ambiguity. This wasn't a film you watched once. It haunted you. It was a commentary on fame, loneliness, and the human tendency to chase pleasure at the expense of meaning. For 1960s audiences, it was a wake-up call wrapped in velvet. And for modern viewers, La Dolce Vita remains a sobering portrait of a world drowning in its own excess. The Umbrellas of Sherborg, 1964. Roger Ebert once called The Umbrellas of Sherborg the most romantic film ever made, because it understands that love doesn't always win. Unlike the sweeping love stories of its time, this French musical dared to be bittersweet. Every line is sung, every color vivid, but behind the pastel hues is a film about loss, choices, and the quiet tragedy of growing up. Catherine Deneuve stars as Geneviève, a teenage girl who falls in love with Guy, a mechanic. Their love is pure, naive, and all-consuming until war separates them. What follows isn't melodrama, it's life. Time passes, people change, dreams fade, and when they reunite years later, they're strangers with polite smiles and different futures. Ebert was captivated by how Demy used style not to distract, but to deepen the emotion. The candy-colored world made the heartbreak sharper. The music, by Michel Legrand, lingers long after the credits roll. For audiences, The Umbrellas of Cherbourg became a revelation, a musical that didn't pretend everything would be all right, but showed how we learn to live anyway. The 1960s reshaped cinema, and Roger Ebert's favorites weren't just great, they were groundbreaking. These films challenged norms, stirred emotions, and dared to ask difficult questions. Whether you're discovering them for the first time or revisiting with fresh eyes, they still have the power to move you. Subscribe for more cinematic journeys ahead.